Hi, Michael, and welcome to the show. Tell us how to be a super speaker in 14 minutes.
Well, that's a great question, Karnveer. And I've got a book about it. There are 7 principles, and this is how you learn how to work the crowd and become a commanding and effective speaker. So let's get to it. The very first principle for super speaking is make delivery the priority. You know, we live in an era of content, and people think if they just throw great content out there, you're going to hold an audience. But that's not the way it works. You have to grab the listener and arouse them emotionally so that they're going to want to become invested in what you're telling them. And practice. Make use of the tools you've got on your phone, on your camera. Record yourself. Get impartial feedback. Don't go to the family or friends. You know why? They'd lied and hurt you, not to avoid hurting your feelings. You need to also speak as often as you can. And once you get a great delivery, that's how you're going to learn how to charge up that audience and hold them. You know, I'm sure you've been in a case where you've been in a meeting where you've had to speak and you feel a little bit awkward, or you feel maybe even incompetent or lost. Well, you're not alone. Of course, public speaking's acquired this fearsome and mythic reputation, and the numbers bear it out. Would you believe that 80% of the population battle some fear, but they get through it? And then there's the 10% who are said to suffer severe anxiety attacks. And apparently 10% are said to feel no fear at all. But I've never met anybody in that category. Have you? It's to your advantage to learn the principles for super speaking, because Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, who is one of the world's most influential investors, has said that speaking ability can boost your career value by as much as 50%. And you know why? Modern business is increasingly driven by relationships. We find ourselves today sharing information across not only teams and organizations, but across countries. We could be communicating with people from different cultures. So learning how to speak with clarity and nuance is a must. It's not an option. And then there's the pandemic. With so many companies embracing mobile video conferencing applications like Zoom, the good speakers are standing up now more than ever. Whereas the weaker speakers, it's being shown, are not faring as well in the video conferencing realm, which gives you something to think about in terms of one's career longevity in the mobile era. The second principle for super speaking is put on a show. You have to remember that whenever you're giving a talk, no matter where you are or what it's about, you're a performer. The people you're addressing are an audience, and that space you're occupying, that's the stage. And audiences expect performers on stages to put on shows. It's just the way we're wired. So you have to use every trick you can think of to make that audience feel that they're being addressed directly. You're always in show mode, no matter the kind of speak or spoken word presentation is that you're making. It could even be a eulogy, say for a CEO who's passed away. But your job as a speaker is to reach them through their emotions. So use humor where it's appropriate, tell stories, use analogies, comparing things that are not familiar to things that are familiar. Use statistics. And let your tone of voice and your eye contact and your gestures hold that audience with you so they feel they're part of something greater than just an offering of facts. Principle number 3, display personality. Have you ever been to a conference where there have been multiple speakers over the course of a long day? Even the most polished speakers all kind of start to blend together and become a big mass. They may have knowledge that's useful, but are you going to walk away remembering any of them greatly? I've been at a conference where I've seen the speakers who are rough and who are knowledgeable, but just may not have quite the panache of their predecessors. Wow, the crowd. You know why? It's because there's a human inclination to notice and remember the people who display personality. That means they're showing their enthusiasms, they're showing their quirks, they're showing their biases, and yet making it all work for them in a way that the audience feels it makes sense. Here's a little tip. You should always try to avoid reading, say, a speech or any kind of presentation where it's all written out for you. So you're reading a word at a time. First of all, you're going to go, it's important to avoid Obviously, that's not going to help. You're not going to have any eye contact with the audience. But most of all, you're not going to provide the audience with a window into your personality, depriving them of the main reason, of the main thing they want to see when they're seeing a speaker. The other thing is, let your personality emerge by creating keywords from your material. Okay, if you're going to give a speech, you could write it out and then go back and just pick out 2 or 3 words from each sentence or even paragraph that will get you fired up emotionally. Because when you're fired up, you can fire up the audience. And that's how they're going to see the personality emerge. Principle number 4 for super speaking is a biggie. Feel the fear. But keep on practicing and keep on speaking. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. You can't banish fear, no matter what books and courses say that have titles like Fearless Speaking Made Easy. Ain't going to happen. We have to feel fear. It's the way we're wired. It's a defense mechanism. It protects us from danger. So you have to accept that you may feel some anxiety before you speak. And in fact, you need some in order to get fired up and give an engaging presentation. It's better to focus on the things you can control, like worrying about what others think about you while you're speaking. Here's a way to deal with that. Try to come up with a mantra that contains your personal philosophy. You know, I had a problem. I'm very competitive sometimes. And I had to remind myself, Mike, I seek to excel, not to compete. Try to come up with something like that. You'll be amazed at how it soothes you when you're getting anxious, waiting to go on, and you're nervous and you want to just find a crack in the floor and crawl into it and die. It's better to be calm because you're doing your best. And you'll also help yourself become a more effective speaker by organizing your rehearsals so that it will be productive. So use all the things we've spoken about so far: keywords, recording yourself, critiquing yourself honestly. And if your rehearsal is productive, the speech you ultimately present will be meaningful and it will be efficiently presented and memorable. Number 5 is give the audience a reason to care about the talk. When audiences are sitting listening to a speech, or any kind of, if they're at a meeting, listening to people talk, often their biggest concern is, why should I care about this? They need details that show why a talk matters. I love what Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple, did when he presented the iPod to the world for the first time. You know what he said? He held up the iPod and he said, this little device is about the size of a package of playing cards, and it can hold about 1,000 songs, my entire music library. But you know what he did beyond that? He said this. He said, and it fits right in my pocket. Wow. With that, Steve Jobs established not only that Apple had a superior portable music player, but that it would go right in your pocket. You mean I can have my entire music library right in my pocket? Wow. The other important point under this principle is that you must never assume that the crowd knows everything you're talking about. I don't need to explain this. They already know it. That's not the way it should work. You're the speaker. The audience looks to you to show them what's worth knowing. So don't let them down. The 6th principle for super speaking is reveal what's inside you. You know, there's a reason why soap operas have lasted so long in culture. Audiences like watching the display of emotion. So in a speaking setting, you need to try to let an audience catch you expressing emotion that's so real and so intense that you can't help letting it escape. And the more genuine the feelings you show, the deeper the bond you're going to create with the audience. You have to understand that if you say, well, you know, Mike, I don't know if I feel comfortable revealing myself publicly like that. But that's the deal. You need to be able to show your emotion on stage. That's part of being that show person that we mentioned about earlier in this presentation. So reveal what's inside you. And now we come to principle number 7, which is keep things easy to follow. Often speakers forget that audiences for speeches or any kind of meeting presentation generally don't have the opportunity to play back what they miss. If it goes by them, it's gone. And if an audience has to struggle too hard to follow the narrative, they'll tune you out. So here's a tip. When you're creating those keywords, line them up, give them a structure so that they form a clear storyline. That will help you guide the audience through the twists and turns of your story. And sprinkle your speech liberally with transition words like meanwhile, or a year earlier, or a reason for X may be. You can do that as much as you want, because let's face it, you're all they've got to guide them through the twists and turns of your speech. So be a leader and keep things easy to follow. Now, a question in your mind at this point may be, well, why should I listen to you? Well, good question. I've been making the study of the art of working audiences a lifelong project. I started out as a kid playing ukulele for my family and friends. I eventually became a musician. I played across the United States and Canada, playing vintage jazz and blues music. And I needed to know how to work the audience so that the owner of the club would invite me back. I also have become a speaking coach, drawing on my experience as a journalist. I've written for financial publications such as the Wall Street Journal, and I've taught public speaking at Rutgers University. I feel that the book I've written, How to Become a Super Speaker, the 7 Principles for Speaking with Confidence and Connecting with Audiences, is really moving the conversation in a direction it's needed to take for years, but seems to me does too rarely. Speaking courses and books often overemphasize the importance of the individual speaker. They don't talk about the importance of connecting with audiences enough, and there's a lack of quality feedback. That's how you become a good speaker, by doing it a lot and by getting quality feedback. And so this book just strips everything down to the essentials with its 7 principles. And I'm confident that by applying these principles, and if you can work with a knowledgeable coach or a mentor or a professor or even a coworker whose opinion you have a lot of faith in, you can improve your speaking ability exponentially.
How has the speaking changed in the virtual world? With Zoom.
I think it's become an education for everybody. I think it's also a work in progress for a lot of people. Certainly for, depending on your generation, if you never did a lot of work on mobile, you're having to learn on the spot. So you're learning about things like lighting, things like audio quality, not to mention eye contact and looking up at that camera there. A lot of people will see their image on the screen and maybe they'll be talking to it here, but in fact, the camera's here. So it's a lot of it has been some technical stuff. But I would also say that the principles of addressing your audience haven't changed. It's just that the audience is on the other side of the camera lens. My goal as a speaker is still to engage you and to motivate you to listen to what I'm speaking about. And in that sense, that has not changed. The best way to rehearse a speech is to try writing out your speech in full and then creating those keywords. Rehearse with the keywords until you don't need to see them anymore, and keep polishing and adjusting the keywords as you go along. And then finally, if you want to build credibility and trust with the audience, you need to be certain that not only are you being honest and appearing genuine, because hopefully the material you're talking about matters to you. Be aware of other viewpoints out there, other ways of seeing things, and try to address them, or at least to include them in the way that you're approaching the audience. That's how you get trust. If you're stuck, don't hesitate to contact me or get the book.